this plastic piece right here can get uncomfortable after a while. So she's not in the control room tonight, but Cece, who sometimes fills in as our TPM, makes these little knit baubles.
Love it. Love it. That's
awesome. After 3 or 4 hours sitting
nice.
here, it hurts your head.
Yeah, that wears on your dome.
Wears on the dome.
All right.
There you go.
Yes. Okay, this is E-block?
Yeah.
Okay. Dun, dun.
1 second, let me move this.
Slack.
All right, all good.
All right. Okay, so we're trying that thing tomorrow, right? That secret thing? Nice.
This
Nice.
secret thing.
4, 3.
And finally tonight, there are some brands that are so big, we use the brand as the name of the product itself. Jell-O is one of them, but the Jell-O we know is getting some major changes thanks to a push for natural ingredients and less sugar. NBC's Vicky Nguyen gels all the details together for us.
Make dessert. Instead, I made some fun.
A century-old American dessert marketed to parents and kids for generations.
There's so much you can do when you have a bowl of Jell-O gelatin made up.
With much of its appeal coming from its gravity-defying gelatin and its most unnatural colors, now trying to fit into a new mold with a more natural look. Jell-O rolling out a new line made without synthetic colors or artificial sweeteners.
I feel like you can kind of taste that it's artificial, so it definitely sounds more intriguing.
Its maker, the Kraft Heinz Company, says Jell-O simply will have real fruit juice. It will also cut 25% of the sugar from the original version and its puddings. Ingredients, it says, parents increasingly want.
I'd buy it more.
One new survey showing nearly half of U.S. parents say they're looking for options with less sugar for their kids. And industry-wide sales of pre-made gelatin fell 21% over the last 4 years.
I think we'll see more and more of this, particularly because people want to know what's in their food and there's a demand for it. And ultimately, it's for the good of the health of the American population. So as a dietitian, I'm going to say thumbs up to that.
The brand getting slammed on social media for its legacy products, which will still be available for now.
You're getting a ton of chemicals when you're eating Jell-O.
Shaking up the jiggly snack coincides with the Trump administration's Make America Healthy Again agenda, spearheaded by Health Secretary RFK Jr. and backed by an army of influencers known as Maha Moms.
In the United States, they use petroleum-based dyes that hurt American kids.
After the FDA banned an artificial dye, Red No. 3, at the end of President Biden's term, Team Maha going further, urging food makers to phase out other artificial colorings. Kraft Heinz saying last summer it would do just that by the end of next year. And other big brands, Hershey, Kellogg's, General Mills, and more, falling in line. Cheetos and Doritos, owned by PepsiCo, rolled out colorless alternatives to some of their chips. Maha Moms are, for the most part, praising the big shift on dyes, but have recently clashed with the administration on other issues, like its decision to increase production of a controversial pesticide. And whether consumers will buy these new, more muted food products, still to be seen.
I would just eat it.
Kraft Heinz announced a similar artificial dye-free alternative Jell-O a decade ago. It was discontinued. We'll see if this fresh change will actually stick. Vicky Nguyen, NBC News.
I'm Vicky. Thank you so much. And that's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Gotti Schwartz. We'll see you here tomorrow. But until then, stay tuned to NBC News Now. Clear, right? Okay, clear. We got 6 minutes to talk. Hello, how's it going? Hi, everybody. Hello, chat. Did you guys see that story? That's the end of the story. You guys got a sneak peek. You guys saw the end of the show even before the show started.
What did you eat as a kid? Be honest.
Dude, okay, Lisa, I have thoughts. Listen to this. This is so messed up. I would have loved this as a kid because I had such severe ADHD, behavior disorder, all this stuff, that my mom would not let me have artificial colors or flavors or like red dye or anything good, ever.
My brother couldn't have red dye
Shout
either.
out, Mom.
for the
but
same
like
reasons.
I would like from 3rd grade to like probably like 9th grade, my mom was like,
So 9th
and I had
grade?
3
You weren't
brothers.
allowed red dye in
Yeah.
9th grade.
Dude, no. So my brothers would like, like everybody would have like fun cereals and stuff, but like I was the one that had to eat different stuff, and like my stuff was bland, and it wasn't, and it wasn't necessarily the sugars. It was the artificial colors and flavors. And anytime she saw that, because of some ADHD book that she read, I was like,
she's not
allowed
wrong.
to, and it was, dude. Now there are options. I mean, also, I do stay away from artificial colors and flavors as often as I can, and all of a sudden, you know,
Jello, I
I'm
know
less
at least
unhinged.
pudding has a ton of like sugar-free
Let's bring
and
in Gabe
zero
Gutierrez,
sugar
who's been
options
following this
that
for
you
us.
can use
Gabe,
that I
walk us
use
through
in
what's
some of my
actually
little,
specifically
like,
in this
fat-free
indictment here when it comes to
recipes.
Raul Castro,
Yeah.
and what evidence
Oh,
do they have?
Hi is wondering,
Is that final
Well,
shot
it
a
is a
live shot from the
stunning
Universal?
indictment, and
It
it
should
accuses
be,
Raul
but it's not. I think it's just.
I don't think we have a
The
camera there.
Maduro
Yeah, I know.
indictment was more
Yeah, we should
recent
get like
allegations.
we should
This
get
is something
for
that
Universal
happened 30
Studios
years
or
ago.
like Griffith Observatory. That would
Gabe
be
Gutierrez
amazing.
at the White House. Gabe, thank
Dude,
you.
Peace Bucks, Sweet Tarts, and all the good candy. I used to sneak Sweet Tarts. I'd be like, Pop Tarts even? Like, I'd be like, yo, your mom send you to school with a Pop Tart? Like, let me have some of that,
So, like-
please.
So like
Service
pixie
to elementary,
sticks,
that
you could
was a
even have
menace.
pixie sticks, just straight sugar in a straw.
Pixie sticks? Yeah. Well, that's, yeah. And when I got in trouble at Sierra Vista for taking, I told you about that, when I would take my little bags of sugar and then I would put Kool-Aid in them and I would sell them for 35 cents. So then I could buy like the Nutty Buddy bars, which I was definitely not allowed to have. And then I would just be all riled up, and my mom would be like, "What is going on? Why isn't this no artificial color and flavor diet
This
not
is
working?"
not working.
Dude, it was rough. It was rough. Anyway, yeah, neurodivergence is a beautiful thing, but artificial colors and flavors.
Raul Castro, but
Has
when
something to do
the
with
Trump
all that.
administration during his first term,
Shar
slapped
got
more
engaged. No, I
restrictions
didn't.
on,
Thank you
Cuba's
for the
government, and now
update.
fulfilling promises to
00294.
the Cuban
What else is
American
going on
community
in the good
Miami,
old
which politically
Albuquerque?
has been very significant for.
Brain uses 25% of the calories you metabolize, so candy is good for the brain. Peace Bucks. Dude, I would have told that to my mom way back in the day. Where was that information 30 years ago? Right Now News, what up? What up, Right Now News? How's it going? You want to know something? Your Right Now News, our news is about 2 minutes away. 3-cent Jolly Ranchers. I used to ride my bike to Allsups also while I was on this no artificial color and flavor thing that my mom would get very, very mad. But if I had 25 cents, guess what? Bazookas. Easy.
Oh, you can't even
Also.
wait. The bazookas, like the rock hard ones.
Yeah,
Oh.
they were the cheap ones.
That takes some teeth out.
Look, we didn't have a lot of money, but a quarter here, a quarter there.
2 minutes.
It was great.
To see reverse.
2 minutes to see reverse. You guys heard that big booming voice? Yup. Mike's in the house. Sid's on the Ronin. Hi. All right. Red 40 is what I grew up on. Yeah, that's why.
We all did. And look, we turned out
we
fine.
are.
We're fine.
We turned out totally fine. Look, yeah, they gave us a show, guys. We're fine. Isabella, thank you for sharing the stream on TikTok. Right Now News. We are an independent student-run news network, and we love NBC News. And stay tuned now.
Yay!
You just made my night. Tell me everything. Send me a DM. I will follow you guys. Where student-run? What schools? Where? What part of the country? How do you guys see the future of news? What are people doing right? What are people doing wrong? Dude, blow up the chat, please. I want to hear all of it.
We're available to
Kevin
guest
got mod,
guest
that's
teach
right.
this semester.
About 30.
Yes, 30 seconds. Am I starting there?
We need a side
Okay, so we're
gig.
starting there. Here we go. 20 seconds till we start. 20 seconds till showtime, everybody. Here we go. We are leading with Cuba. All right. You guys are going to be right here. Just hide right here. I'm going to mute you. 15 seconds to launch. Let's see. SML. Well, thank you. Thank you, SML.
5,
Here we go, 5 seconds. Hey there, I'm Gotti Schwartz, and tonight, some 30 years after Cuban Americans were shot out of the sky and killed, the U.S. government has charged former Cuban President Raul Castro with murder. And for a lot of Cubans here in the United States and overseas, and for the families of the victims, it is years of long-awaited accountability.
I think right now, if I were Raul Castro, I would be very worried. I think he will eventually face justice, and if he dies before he can come to a U.S. court, he already knows that he is charged with murder, which he got away with for 30 years.
The Justice Department has indicted Castro and other top officials on 4 counts of murder. Castro is also being charged with conspiracy to kill U.S. nationals and destruction of an aircraft. All of this, according to the indictment, relates to Cuba's military shooting down of a pair of civilian planes way back in 1996, belonging to a Florida-based group called Brothers to the Rescue. It was this nonprofit known for saving thousands and thousands of Cuban refugees fleeing the communist regime. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche unsealed the charges at a news conference in Miami, which just happened to overlap with Cuban Independence Day, or was specifically timed for that, marking the end of U.S. military occupation of the island way back in 1902.
President Trump is committed to restoring a very simple but important principle. If you kill Americans, we will pursue you, no matter who you are, no matter what title you hold, and in this case, no matter how much time has passed.
Now, the timing of this is extremely significant since it comes at a time when the Trump administration has been putting maximum pressure on the Cuban government. Now let's bring in Gabe Gutierrez, who's been following this for us. Gabe, walk us through what's actually specifically in this indictment here when it comes to Raul Castro, and what evidence do they have?
Well, Gotti, it is a stunning indictment, and it accuses Raul Castro and 5 other men of murder, of conspiracy to kill U.S. nationals, and also destroying aircraft. Now, if you look through the indictment, Gotti, it lays out some more specifics with the 5 other men on how they were involved in this. But for Raul Castro, it basically argues that he ordered the Cuban pilots to undergo training missions to take down the Brothers to the Rescue plane. And the indictment kind of acts as a bit of a history lesson here. It really goes deep into Cuba and U.S. relations back in the 1990s with the Brothers to the Rescue plane, this humanitarian group that would fly in international waters looking for Cuban migrants, perhaps on rafts, and would try to help them. But in the months before the shoot down, according to the indictment, and has been reported before, the group had actually flown over Cuba and dropped pro-democracy leaflets. Well, according to the indictment, Cuban officials looked at that and took offense to that, took it as an assault on their national security. And then at one point, according to the indictment, Raul Castro ordered the takedown, the shoot down of these Brothers to the Rescue plane. So it does act as much of a, or does appear to be much of a history lesson looking through this indictment on something that happened 30 years ago, Gotti.
Yeah, we see those images of Raul Castro standing there next to his brother Fidel, and you got to wonder if Fidel was still alive, whether he would be listed also or possibly charged in this indictment. But Gabe, the big question for a lot of Cuban Americans here is, this is 30 years ago. Why did it take so long? Why are we only seeing this now?
Well, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche was asked that directly today. He didn't really give a specific answer, said he couldn't explain why now as opposed to 20 years ago, perhaps. However, the grand jury did return this indictment nearly a month ago on April 23rd. The Trump administration, the DOJ, decided to unseal it today, which also happens to be Cuban Independence Day. So certainly a lot of symbolism there. But Gotti, this all comes, this is can be argued it's as much of a legal document, and in some ways, some are viewing it as a political one. The politically, Trump administration obviously very different than the Obama administration, and it was just a little over 10 years ago that the Obama administration really tried to thaw diplomatic relations with the Cuban government, with Raul Castro himself, with President Obama attending a baseball game in Havana with Raul Castro. But when the Trump administration, during his first term, he slapped more restrictions on Cuba's government, and now fulfilling promises to the Cuban American community in Miami, which politically has been very significant for President Trump. They have gone about, getting this indictment, and it all comes as the administration overall ramps up the pressure here on the Cuban government. It's experiencing widespread fuel shortages, of course, and raising a lot of questions about what happens next, of course, given that we're just several months after the capture of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. Will the U.S. follow that same playbook and try to arrest Raul Castro inside Cuba? That remains an open question at this point, Gotti.
Yeah, especially since he's well into his 90s. And Gabe, when we compare this indictment that we're seeing today with the indictment that we've read against Nicolas Maduro, like, what are the similarities and what are the differences?
Well, look, Maduro had been indicted quite some time before he was arrested. In that indictment, it had very specific instances of his family, of allegations of drug trafficking specifically. There was a reward that the FBI had increased shortly before he was captured. Again, with regards to the evidence here against Raul Castro, while it does allege that he ordered this, the Trump administration appears to be letting that evidence come out in court. In terms of specifics against Raul Castro, it doesn't have a day-to-day that he met with this person and perhaps said this. It just says that he ordered these training missions. And back then, it would have been very hard to imagine, and the U.S. has said this before, that Fidel Castro has actually said that he ordered these. There's nothing that happened in Cuba without the authorization of Fidel Castro. And at that time, Raul Castro was the defense minister. So in terms of how this is different from the Maduro indictment, again, that one perhaps could be argued had more specificity than this document. This one reads like a long history lesson, but that's the nature of the charges here. The Maduro indictment was more recent allegations. This is something that happened 30 years ago, Gotti.
Gabe Gutierrez at the White House. Gabe, thank you. And we've been telling you about the indictment of Raul Castro, but we want to take you back to that moment in 1996 when Cuban fighter jets shot down 2 civilian aircraft, killing 4 Cuban Americans. NBC's Jesse Kirsch has those details.
February 24th, 1996. 3 small Cessna airplanes take off near Miami. One pilot tells Havana's control tower they're heading south. The pilot is warned. Cuba scrambles fighter jets, shooting down 2 of the Cessnas and killing 3 Americans and 1 U.S. permanent resident. Cuba claimed the planes violated its airspace, but the planes were unarmed and on a humanitarian mission, according to a congressional report. Then President Bill Clinton called the incident a flagrant violation of international law.
It is wrong, and the United States will not tolerate it.
Now the Trump administration is renewing the push for accountability, targeting Cuba's 94-year-old former authoritarian president, Raul Castro, according to 2 U.S. officials. He is the younger brother of Fidel Castro, the late leader of Cuba's 1959 communist revolution, which led to decades of tension with the United States.
Se marchan las armas estratégicas.
The downed planes were part of a Cuban-American exile group called Brothers to the Rescue, volunteers credited with helping save over 10,000 lives. But the group had also penetrated Cuban airspace at least twice, dropping pro-democracy leaflets. When the planes were shot down in 1996, Raul Castro was in charge of Cuba's armed forces, and Fidel Castro told Time magazine later that year that his brother was part of the chain of command that decided to target the planes. The Trump administration's approach to Cuba resembles what happened in Venezuela. Earlier this year, the U.S. apprehended then-leader Nicolas Maduro in a daring raid in Caracas. He was indicted on charges including narco-terrorism and has pleaded not guilty.
Does the Cuban regime have to look at it differently now than they would have before Nicolas Maduro was seized?
Yes, absolutely. Because again, there had been a precedent for this in Panama. I think that this indictment could mean two things. It could mean that the talks are progressing, and that this is, but that they need slightly more pressure to get to the next step. It could also mean that the talks have broken down after that CIA visit.
Jesse Kirsch, NBC News, Miami.
NBC News reached out to Cuba's foreign ministry in Havana and the island's embassy in Washington, D.C. for comment. So far, we have not heard back. But today, Cuba's president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, said the country acted in what he called legitimate self-defense against what he described as notorious terrorists. I want to bring in former U.S. representative from Florida and NBC News political analyst Carlos Curbelo. Carlos, thank you so much for being with us. I got to say, looking at this video and then looking at what we just saw, what happened to Maduro, what do you think the reaction would be if, I don't know, we did actually see some sort of high-level special operation to arrest a 94-year-old in Cuba?
Well, Gadi, certainly the optics would be a little more challenging than with Maduro, who's a very tall and fit man. Raul Castro is very elderly, but Raul Castro is someone who has blood on his hands, as is documented in this indictment today, someone who murdered United States citizens. So this is actually an indictment that is stronger and more grave than the one filed against Maduro, than the one filed against Manuel Noriega back in 1989. Those were for drug charges mainly. This is making this individual responsible for the death of United States citizens. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but without a doubt, Gadi, this is a clear signal that the Trump administration is sending to Raul Castro and to the rest of the leadership in Cuba. Look at what happened to Nicolas Maduro. It could also happen to you.
Yeah, and now he is charged with murder. Carlos, can you take us back real fast to 1996? Because both Cuba and the United States were accusing each other of spying, and there is talk of this organization possibly being infiltrated by maybe a Cuban asset that led to some of the information as to how that operation went down. What do we know here?
It was very dramatic, Gadi. I was 16 years old in high school, and the whole community stopped on February 24th, 1996, because everyone was shocked that these two little planes, imagine, just the image of a military jet firing on a Cessna, on a small plane, a plane that has no air conditioning. And these people were flying a humanitarian mission. They used to go out and look for Cuban rafters. In the mid-90s, a lot of people fled Cuba by raft. And this group would go out and look for them and drop water and food provisions while the Coast Guard was able to meet the Cuban migrants and either bring them to shore or in some cases repatriate them. So it was just an unforgettable moment. Madeleine Albright was the Secretary of State at the time. She visited Miami a couple weeks after that. And yes, as you said, it was particularly shocking that one of the Brothers to the Rescue pilots, obviously not one flying one of these planes, showed up in Cuba, I think the very next day, and it became known that he was a spy for the Cuban government inside the organization. He left a woman here who he was married to who was also shocked. So it was a very dramatic day, February 24th, 1996, and the weeks after that were also unforgettable. And it's remarkable, 30 years later, the families have been asking for justice, have been asking for this Raul Castro indictment since that event. Number of U.S. administrations, not just Democrat, but the George W. Bush administration also failed to indict Raul Castro. The Trump administration has now taken that step.
Yeah. And Carlos, just last week we saw, the head of the CIA in Havana. Now we know that this indictment had already been returned. We know that there is some sort of negotiating going on between Cuban officials under this de facto embargo right now and high-level officials with the Trump administration. We heard that analyst just before you came on saying this is either maybe a good sign that talks are going well, or this is a sign that everything's falling apart and they need pressure. How do you see it?
I think it's more the latter, Gaddy. Here's the problem. The United States wants the Cuban regime to make a number of concessions, like freeing all political prisoners, reestablishing some basic rights in Cuba, like freedom of the press, freedom of assembly. And the Cuban regime does not want to do anything that is going to risk its hold on power. This is their business. This is what they're good at. They have ruled the country for 67 years. The country is essentially the personal business, the hacienda of the Castro family. So anything that they do that would weaken their grip on power is something that they're going to reject, and that's why we're at this impasse.
Carlos Curbelo, always appreciate your analysis. Thank you so very much. And now to those wildfires blazing across Southern California. There are 4 of those fires: the Bain, the Sandy, the Verona, and this Santa Rosa Island fire. As investigators are looking into whether that one might have been caused by a distress flare from a shipwrecked sailor. That sailor later had to be airlifted from the wildfire. All of that is still under investigation. But that fire has now burned almost 17,000 acres. The Sandy and the Bain fires, those have burned over 1,000 acres, and 40,000 people right now are still under evacuation orders. Now let's bring in Steve Patterson, who's out there in Simi Valley with what looks like smoke behind you. What's the fire doing right now, Steve?
Yeah, Gotti, that's exactly right. Smoke is active behind me. That's because this time of day, usually we see the same thing happen, right? Crosswinds. So you have wind going in one direction all day long. Then all of a sudden around 3:30, 4 o'clock, 4:30, the wind starts going the other direction, creating the scene that you see behind me, the smokestack. You can take a walk real quick. You can see some of that white smoke over there. Looks kind of harmless. That is because, though, there are columns of fire in that canyon. We've seen fire trucks moving in that direction, firefighters all day long in the air, with aircraft fixed wing, with helicopters dropping water, those fixed wing aircraft dropping retardant, trying to knock that out as much as they possibly can, because obviously they don't want it encroaching, jumping to another canyon. Really, got it. It only takes about 1 ember for that to happen. Not to mention what we're seeing on the ground here. I mean, look at this stuff. This is all dry brush, right? You see this surrounding this area. This whole thing is just a runway of this stuff. I spoke to a firefighter heading up into these hillsides as they were cutting lines, talking about what they're doing to prevent something like this from catching. Listen to this.
You look at the grasses and brush around us. This is incredibly dry fuel. That's why I say this fire still has so much potential. What we're walking to is a transition between a dozer line cut by equipment to hand line. So our hand crews are going in with tools, scraping down to mineral soil.
Incredible work that they're doing. It is round the clock. You can see that column again. We've seen that thing before. It was a white column of smoke. It was completely on fire. Firefighters have been hitting that repeatedly. It's the work that they will do all into the night. Obviously, they've been doing a good job. The winds after this point kind of died down. The temperatures cooled down a little bit as well. It's why they've been allowed to get about 15% containment on this fire. Pretty significant for the battle that has been raging now since Monday. Gotti?
And a very, very different scene than the video that we were just showing out in Simi Valley as well. But it's not just Simi Valley. Evacuations are still in place, I believe, for Riverside, for the Bain and Verona fire. Any chance that those are going to expand, possibly reduce? And what happens to those who have already evacuated?
Well, again, this is the worst kind of point in the day, right? And this is one we saw yesterday. If you remember, all of a sudden we were reporting on this fire. Then the Bain fire started, Verona fire started, these fires down in San Diego started. It's because of these crosswinds. So if we see that activity happen again, they very well could be expanding the amount of evacuations that are in place. But as we've seen again throughout the night, as the temperatures cool, as those winds sort of lay down, fire crews get up in the air and they're able to drop as heavy as they've been dropping. Hopefully the containment numbers increase, because while those fires have been growing, so too have the containment. That Bain fire, now 25% or so contained, that is significant on a fire of its size. These are fast little cutting brush fires, very dangerously close to people's homes, very dangerous in and of themselves, and not to mention the air quality, which has been terrible. But firefighters have been getting the upper hand. They are able to get in there and knock them down. We hope that'll happen. Got it?
Yeah, air quality out there, air quality all the way here in Los Angeles. So many people staying inside. Steve Patterson, thank you. And for the latest on the danger of those fires, as well as our Memorial Day weekend forecast, the one and only Bill Cairns has it all. Hey there, Bill.
Gotti, it's been another cleanup day for firefighters. Thankfully, the wind has been pretty light. We don't really see any active plumes of smoke off any of these fires, so that was a good sign during the day today. And these are kind of the fires that we're tracking out here. You know, the biggest one, by far, bigger than all the others combined, is the Santa Rosa Island fire. That's over almost 17,000 acres. And we're concerned tonight that when that, the smoke from that, when we get that onshore wind, that is what is going to be coming onshore, and that's why we have the air quality alert. Some of the other fires really haven't grown much today. The Bain fire was the one that kind of spread pretty rapidly yesterday. So here's the current winds, and you notice that this is why firefighters have had the upper hand over the last day or two. The winds have been very light. Yes, there's no moisture in the air. It's still dry, but when the winds are light, they can make a lot of headway on these fire lines. And here's the map showing, as we go through the rest of today into tonight, how we see the west wind, and whatever smoke is being produced from these fires will be blowing towards downtown LA this evening, and that's why we have the air quality alerts that actually go all the way over to Riverside. We've had a lot of other active weather during the day today. We've had a pretty incredible May heat wave in the mid-Atlantic. That is ending this evening with a cold front going through with a lot of thunderstorms. Some wind damage is possible over the next hour or two as these storms begin to head towards the coast, but the biggest impact has been travel-wise. What a nightmare to fly anywhere from D.C. to New York today. All of the airports are between 1 to 2 hour delays at times when the storms are going through ground stops. So the airlines are, they got their work cut out for them, and a lot of frustrated passengers too. So let's take you into the forecast for Memorial Day weekend. The western half of the country, abundant sunshine, dry, warm. Hopefully we'll get all these fires under control. The worst of the weather, East Texas, including the Houston area, towards Louisiana, and just a chilly, nasty rain in areas of the mid-Atlantic. Some areas are going to be like in the 40s and rainy over Memorial Day weekend. Then on Sunday, still dealing with that heavy rain down along the Gulf Coast from Texas into Louisiana. Notice how, very quiet, pretty warm too. Boise getting up to 90 degrees by the time we get to Sunday. Eastern half of the country, pretty much if you're east of the Mississippi River, do not count on a lot of sunshine. You'll be lucky to get a few dry periods. It looks like Sunday possibly dry in some sections of the Northeast. By the time we get to Memorial Day itself, a lot of parades around the country, no problems in the northern plains and many areas out west, but the southeast and the deep south continues to be the travel trouble spot right through the holiday weekend. Gotti.
Oh, what a mixed bag. Bill Cairns, thank you. And don't go anywhere. Coming up next to look at some wild video of a car catching fire, then blowing up in Manhattan, what we're learning there. Plus, scrolling through vacation videos on TikTok. Well, now, apparently, you can book that trip. You're watching directly on the app. More on that later this hour, so stay tuned. Also, guys, if you see this little QR code right back here, just pick up your phone, scan it, see if it works. You might be able to scan on through and then chat with us live during the breaks. It could take you to like YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, where you can just comment. You can tell us your thoughts. You can just chat. So swing on by and let us know what you think. Commercial. Can you guys hear me okay? Can you hear me now? Am I muted? Am I not muted? I don't know. We are from Southern California. We're independent, but we're a part of Indio High School Media Program. Nice! It's 5 years on the air. NBC News is our biggest inspiration. That is awesome. That is awesome, awesome, awesome. Please send me a link to some of your stuff. I would love to see what the future is going to look like. And it's awesome that you guys found us. Man, that makes my day, really. Lord Skylar, hey, what's up? Haven't seen you in a little while. Michi Rose, how are you? What were you guys talking about a little bit earlier? The fire season. San Pedro Sula, Honduras is in the house. Hello. Catalina Island, yeah, Santa Rosa Island, pretty crazy. I mean, they think that it had to do with that person that was shipwrecked that made maybe a fire from a signal flare, but wild, wild stuff. Kat, oh, so they were aiding immigrants seeking asylum. Yes, that organization was helping the refugees that were coming over
15.
On boats. That is actually, now that you bring that up, it is, historical context is everything. Here we go.
5, 4, 3.
Hey, welcome back. Here are some other headlines we are watching tonight. Atlanta is under a flash flood warning tonight as heavy rain overwhelms roads. Highway lanes, you can see them underwater there, causing heavy traffic and stranding cars during peak rush hour. Also, U.S. Marines boarded an Iranian-flagged oil tanker today for allegedly trying to violate the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. This is the latest video from CENTCOM showing forces actively enforcing that blockade. According to CENTCOM, 91 ships have been redirected from either leaving or entering Iranian ports so far. And a 5.8 magnitude earthquake hit Peru yesterday. You can see the security camera here shaking from all of that, and at least 27 people were hurt. Several buildings were damaged. Thankfully, though, no deaths have been reported. And in New York, the discovery of a sinkhole is shutting down a runway at LaGuardia. Emergency construction crews are on the scene. They're trying to fix it as quickly as possible, but travelers should expect some delays heading into Memorial Day weekend. And former Representative Barney Frank died today. The longtime Massachusetts Democrat led the overhaul of Wall Street regulations after the 2008 financial crisis. He was also among the first openly gay members of Congress and a leading voice for LGBTQ rights. He was 86 years old. And turning now to the deadly attack at a mosque in San Diego, as the local community there is mourning the tragic loss of 3 victims. You see here that community banding together at an interfaith vigil. Tonight, we are also learning more details about the 2 suspects. The FBI describes them as teenage gunmen who were radicalized online. Gunmen died of apparent self-inflicted gunshot wounds before the police had a chance to question them. But there is more on what the FBI said of their investigation. Here it is.
So far in this investigation, we've seized over 30 guns and a crossbow. We also identified writings and various ideologies outlining religious and racial beliefs of how the world they envisioned should look. These subjects did not discriminate on who they hated.
And let's bring in NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky. Morgan, what else are we learning about the suspects and the possible motive here?
Yeah, Gotti, this is certainly going to be a focal point in the investigation, and authorities have been very forthcoming with what they've recovered so far. You have a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old suspect here, Caleb Vasquez and Kane Clark. They've not only recovered that 75 pages of documents that espouse hatred against a variety of groups, anti-Islamic, anti-Semitic, misogynistic in nature. Gotti, they're also looking into authenticating a reported live stream of the actual attack itself from really start to finish. We've seen screen grabs that have not been authenticated yet, but they are incredibly disturbing. And that would really corroborate what we saw in this 75 pages of documents here, Gotti, because contained within that, they called the mass shooter in Christchurch, New Zealand, one of their heroes. And so he, of course, at that time that was carried out, live streamed that entire heinous attack. And so it appears that they may have been trying to do something copycat in nature here. But again, the digital footprints are only starting to be investigated, so there is going to be much more to come, no doubt.
Yeah, and some of the video that you were seeing, I mean, you got the gas canisters. It looks like the...
Right, a Nazi symbol on a gas canister right outside the car where they found both of their bodies, and they believe they took their own lives.
Yeah, and meanwhile, all 3 victims, they were all dads. They were all very well respected in the community. What else do we know about them?
I mean, these were individuals that had been fixtures in this community for decades. We know that one of the victims had been serving this very Islamic center for the last 40 years. Amin Abdullah, we have heard from people on the inside, people on the outside, about the type of man he was. There was a vigil last night, Gotti, where hundreds of people converged on a nearby park. His daughter said that he was so concerned at times about the safety of the people there that he would not go to lunch to make sure that there was someone watching over these kids and these teachers at all times. I want you to hear a little bit more of what his daughter had to say when she addressed the crowd last night.
He would smile at people he did not know. You could see the happiness and just who he was as a person, just looking at his face. And I believe that's exactly the legacy he left behind. He wants all of us to be better. Regardless of who we are, what we identify as, he wants us to be better.
Yeah, you can hear the emotion in her voice, just undeniable there. And we know that he was a father of 8 Since his tragic loss, though, we just checked, and more than $2.5 million has been raised to help support his family going forward. The families of those other two men there, Mansour Kaza and Nadir Awad, also spoke. One of their sons just saying that their father was the man that was always there. And that's kind of the sentiment we kept hearing all week long.
Yeah. And thankfully, they were there because, it could have been so much worse.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, for us dads, for any parents, the worst nightmare is having your kid at school when something like this happens. I know you were talking to a teacher at this school. What happens in those moments, and what do they do?
Yeah, it was incredibly telling. The center reopened today. We saw this young woman walking in through the entrance there. She was, carrying the weight of the tragedy. She took a moment to acknowledge the memorial outside that's only been growing. And I asked her, what was her thought, her first reaction? And she said from that first gunshot, there was no mistaking that sound. She knew they were in trouble. And she said the heroes were those three men outside that, in her own words, she said were worth 1,000 men each, because by engaging those gunmen, they gave her the crucial seconds to tell the kids to take cover and hide. She locked the door. And here's a little bit more of what she told me.
When the shooters came inside, what'd you tell the kids?
We told the kids this is not a shooting drill, there is an active shooter, and let's go. And they went straight to business.
Doing what?
They did exactly what we have practiced doing. They went into the corner of the classroom. They ducked away from the windows. They were quiet. They made sure to ask us if the doors were shut and locked. And, they know the drill. So they were also making sure that everybody was following.
Gaudi, I think I was struck by the fact when she said they made sure to ask us if the door was locked. Yeah. I mean, these are second and third graders here, making sure that they're okay, they're safe. Fortunately, tonight, though, again, they are.
They're safe, and yet processing that trauma, our prayers go out to them, the entire community. Morgan Chesky, thank you. Yeah. Meanwhile, the Ebola death toll is rising as the outbreak spreads in Central Africa, and now an American doctor has tested positive for that virus after treating patients out in the Congo. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa has the latest on him and his family.
Tonight, as the global race to contain Africa's surging Ebola outbreak intensifies, new video shows the American surgeon infected in the DR Congo arriving via ambulance at a German hospital. This, as a report in the Washington Post, says the White House resisted allowing Dr. Peter Stafford to return to the U.S. for treatment, delaying his evacuation and care, according to 5 people familiar with the Ebola response. A White House spokesperson telling NBC News the report is absolutely false. Directors of the missionary group Dr. Stafford was traveling with describing his condition as crews guided him onto a plane.
He's hanging on them, barely strong enough to walk. So he looked really tired and really sick.
Health officials say Dr. Stafford's wife, 4 kids, and another American physician were also exposed and transferred to hospitals in Berlin and Prague for monitoring. So far, there are 139 suspected deaths and close to 600 suspected cases now tied to the outbreak, those case numbers nearly tripling in the last 5 days. Meanwhile, back in the U.S., these are the 2 federal quarantine orders issued to one of the 18 American passengers exposed to hantavirus on this cruise ship and now isolating at this Nebraska hospital, which the passenger calls a prison. A 30-year-old New Yorker, he asked to remain anonymous amid online threats to his fellow passengers. The orders saying leaving early to isolate at home would potentially endanger the public's health, adding if he does leave, he could face a criminal fine or up to a year in jail. The passenger telling us, quote, "No one here is asking not to be under quarantine," adding he's very angry about not being allowed to leave. Maggie Vespa, NBC News.
Maggie, thank you. And check out this video out of New York. A fireball erupted near Wall Street yesterday, sending black smoke into the air. You can see people running from the scene there. NBC News correspondent Emily Akita has more on what happened.
It's like a scene out of a movie. A car engulfed in flames, exploding into a massive fireball in New York City. Sending frantic pedestrians scrambling for safety.
2 Broadway at Stone Street putting a car on fire.
thick black smoke smothered the intersection near Wall Street's famed Charging Bull statue.
There was a series of booms followed by a plume of smoke. And
Josh Crandall works in the area and described the chaos in the thick of rush hour Tuesday.
I didn't know what was going to happen next. Am I safe? Are those other people safe? Is there something bigger going on?
You can see this charge sign even 24 hours later, and over here where the fire burned through a car that the Metropolitan Transportation Authority tells us was one of their vehicles.
Video showing early stages of the fire burning the front end and the scorched aftermath. Remarkably, fire officials say no one was injured in the massive fireball as they investigate what caused the stunning scene. Emily Ikeda, NBC News, New York.
Must have been alarming to see that in person. Emily, thank you so much. And coming up in the future of everything tonight, Elon Musk could become the world's first trillionaire, and it all has to do with this SpaceX out of this world IPO. We're going to explain. 90 seconds. Okay, 90 seconds. We got 90 seconds. Let's see here. It was not, yes, it was a metropolitan, official metropolitan car. Let's see, New York Stock Exchange, yeah, right next to the Bull. Pretty wild, right? Wall Street. Let's see, what else are you guys talking about? We're gonna need some astronauts or planet exploration after all this news. We got a little bit of it. SpaceX, we're kind of getting into the, more of the IPO stuff, but we'll get into that. Look, if you need a palate cleanser, how about some Jell-O? Yeah. Yep. Zoe. Yep. Yeah, I think that'll work.
1 minute. At the big wall.
Oh, thanks for asking about my leg, by the way. My foot is doing much better. I just, I was reading, actually I was talking to AI, and it was like, hey, stop being a wuss about everything and just deal with the pain, because that is your body's way of healing itself. And if it's a ligament problem, you're gonna need to really start working that out and get a bunch of blood flow. So I don't have the boot on, I've got a little brace on, and I am trying really hard to just
15.
get through it. Uh-oh, you know what? You gotta press this thing.
7.
Here we go.
And you're gonna walk back.
Okay.
3.
Hey, welcome back. In tonight's Future of Everything, we are off to trillions and beyond. Literally, we are talking about SpaceX, Elon Musk's company that can break us out of Earth's atmosphere and potentially break the markets, maybe. SpaceX plans to go public, maybe even as soon as next month, and it could be the biggest IPO of all time, raising up to $80 billion, with the company valued at close to $2 trillion. And then they're talking about the possibility of, like, a potential market of 28 trillion. It's hard to wrap your mind around, but just to show you how big this is, look at this graph. Okay, so down here, Uber, Airbnb, Rivian, Porsche, Saudi Aramco. Look, SpaceX, like way up here, 80. This is next level stuff, right? SpaceX is almost completely off the chart, but this comes after a pretty tough week for Elon Musk. He lost his lawsuit against OpenAI and Sam Altman, which he says he is appealing. And there was also a death, a worker death, at SpaceX's Starbase facility in Texas. And right now, all eyes are going to be on one of his launch pads as SpaceX is gearing up to light up their upgraded Starship V3 rocket tomorrow for the first time, potentially, all before launching this enormous stock to the public very, very soon. Let's bring in NBC News tech reporter David Ingram. David, this is interesting stuff. And again, it's, we're getting a financial picture from the company. It's a look under the hood of some of SpaceX's financials in this public SEC filing. Like, it's the first time that we're seeing some of these numbers. First time we're trying to wrap our head around what they say their TAM is, which is, again, 28 trillion. Like, what do we make of this? Like, what is real here for sure, and what is just, hype before the IPO?
So think of this as the beginning of a big sales pitch, Gotti. So Today was the day that the brochure hit everyone's inboxes. This is about a 400-page filing with the SEC from SpaceX. It's called the S1. This is SpaceX and Musk laying out the fundamentals of the company that they hope investors will be interested in buying the stock of. The IPO is scheduled for sometime in June, so that's when investors will be able to buy this for the first time. And this document gave us a sense of various things. One is just Musk's control of SpaceX. The idea that he's proposing is that after this IPO, he would control 85% of the voting power at SpaceX. We heard during the trial weeks ago against OpenAI that Musk really likes to have control of the organizations that he runs. So he wants to have 85%, and he's going to wear 3 different hats: CEO, chairman of the board, and chief technology officer. We also got a sense of the company's financials here. You can see revenue last year of $18.7 billion, but a loss of $4.9 billion. So they're not exactly profitable. That includes amortization and some other factors. But this really gave us a better sense of SpaceX as a company.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see, the net loss, the revenue, huge numbers all the way around. And then again, this TAM, this like total accessible market number of 28 trillion, which is what they're saying. And you notice when they break it down, I mean, a lot of it is space and SpaceX and opening up this economy in orbit. And then a lot of this is AI, right? How much is going to be AI in the future? And how much of this is going to be a space economy?
That is one of the key questions, I think, for investors. And I'll even add a third thing in there, which is the connectivity piece of this. So the way that SpaceX is breaking it down is you've got AI, you've got space, and you've got the Starlink internet service. And Starlink actually seems to be where a lot of the revenue so far is coming from. That's where they said they have 10 million subscribers, which is double what they had a year ago. So one of the surprising things we learned today is that the costs really have been recently on the AI side. You would think with these mega rockets that Musk is sending to space that would be the most expensive thing on the capital expenditure side for SpaceX. But in fact, they're spending multiples of that on AI data centers. So the cost in the future may be split between those two competing priorities.
Yeah, and again, we'll see what happens tomorrow. I know that the IPO is on the horizon, but tomorrow they're going to be launching a very, very large Starship. And if that Starship is successful in taking their connectivity to the next level, it's going to be something to see. David Ingram, thank you so much for joining us. Meanwhile, Google, they seem to be overhauling its look for the first time in its entire 25-year history. The iconic search bar. It got a major revamp, making it bigger, way more interactive, way more AI for those AI-generated information, that the queries. And just as Google is saying, like, out with the old, in with the new Google, TikTok is saying, in with the new, and it's looking like old Google. When you're scrolling and you come across a restaurant you'd love to try, or a hotel you want to visit, or a day trip you want to take, well, remember Google Travel? Now there's this thing called TikTok Go. It's this new feature that lets you book all those things directly on the app, and saying that content creators can make money in the process.
Sis, we just got into the TikTok Go program.
25, you can go back.
So the TikTok Go program is super, super new, but you can earn commission on travel, on restaurants, on leisure, beauty, you name it, there's a category for it.
Think of your favorite stays and hidden gems, but now you actually can get paid.
It is the simplest, easiest way to earn money. You don't have to go live. You don't have to sell anything. They're paying you to make content on dining, hotels, things to do.
Let's bring in Zoe Young. He's a senior writer at Wired Magazine. Great to see you. So sum this up for us. Like, what kind of experiences are you going to be able to book, and how does this work?
Yeah, so right now, if you go on TikTok, it will allow you to book hotels, flights, day trips. I think the idea is that there will be more kind of activities and restaurants coming up in the future too. But really, the whole thing is to make sure that when you see a beautiful video about like a nice hotel on TikTok, you can book that trip like completely within the app. You don't have to pull up Booking. You don't have to go on Google again to search for the reviews of those hotels. Everything will stay within TikTok.
Ironically, we've got the chat going right now for our show on TikTok, and people are like, oh yeah, no, we have seen that. What does this new feature say about TikTok's broader push into the future and where it's wanting to head?
Well, you know, in the past, I would say 5 years, TikTok has really proved that it is one of the most influential social media platforms out there. It creates a lot of content, creates a lot of trends, but how does TikTok extend that kind of influence into the in-person life, right, the physical life? This is how it's trying to do that. It wants you to kind of think of using TikTok even when you are trying to book a restaurant, trying to book a hotel. Whenever you want to search on inspirations, just go on TikTok. Let this one digital platform can be used to for you to book everything in your life. That's what TikTok is working towards.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and it's so interesting that it comes the day after, or at least we're talking about it the day after that, what seems like a pivot from Google into very clear, agentic, like helpful AI. Do you see TikTok and Google like in the same competitive space here?
Definitely. I think, you know, for TikTok to launch this service that allows you to search for hotels and flights directly, you know, this is really the thing that people are using Google for, right? I am an avid user of Google Flights. I might be using TikTok from now on. So I think this is, and what we've seen with TikTok is that when there's enough content on the platform, people will use it as a search engine, even though that's not what the app is designed for. And even though TikTok doesn't really have like a good search engine mechanism, but because there's so many kind of first-hand user-generated content on there, it will try to utilize that and also profit from it, because TikTok will be making commissions out of every deal you made, every transaction you made on the app. So this is a way for it to generate profit while being a content dominator too.
Generate profit, and we'll see how much revenue they actually share. That is still to be determined. Zoe Young from Wired, thank you so very much. Speaking of TikTok, we're taking a look at a drug that's trending that's called, hold on, I already forgot what, gotta say this.
Now for about 3.5. Can I use spironolactone?
Spironolactone? Yeah, I think it's spironolactone. They're talking about spironolactone on TikTok, and while it's used to treat those with high blood pressure and other heart issues, some people online, they've found another use for it. Here's what we're talking about.
I was on spironolactone for 5 months and I actually hated it, but looking back on videos, one thing that I will say that I actually did like about it is I feel like my face looked slimmer and just like less puffy.
Obviously my skin looks amazing, but then my hair started falling out.
Tears? Oh, God, hope this clears my skin.
Hope that clears her skin. That's right, we're talking acne. So how does a heart medication treat those blemishes on those pimples? Let's bring in the one and only Dr. Akshay Sayal to tell us more about this. First of all, to make sure that we're all pronouncing it right. Doctor, is that how you pronounce it here? And this is usually prescribed for heart failure. People are using it for acne. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, got it. You know, fun fact, before you graduate from med school, before they hand you that diploma, they make sure you can pronounce it, and if you can't, they send you back to year one. You got to do it all over again. So yes, this is a medication that is historically given for high blood pressure, for heart failure. It is a diuretic. It's what we call a water pill. It helps you sort of flush out salt and water and bring some of that blood pressure down. It's been used for decades. But what we've sort of found over the years, Scotty, is that people who were taking this medication actually had lower acne. And the reason for this is because it affects something called androgens, or hormones. Things like testosterone, for example, that can stimulate the oil glands in the body to produce more oil and can result in more acne. So what they found, Scotty, is that people who were taking this, and by the way, it is off-label, it's not something that is approved by the FDA for acne. People who do take this have really remarkable results when it comes to reducing some of those blemishes.
Yeah, and earlier we also heard those on TikTok who have used this drug, and they're mentioning all kinds of different, I don't know if they're side effects, drawbacks, but what are the negatives that we definitely know could go with this pill?
Yeah, very important to know the negatives here, especially with the lack of FDA approval for acne. But some things to be aware of. It is a blood pressure medication. With all blood pressure medications, you can have reduced blood pressure. You can have dizziness. You can have lightheadedness. Some other things with this, because it can affect hormone levels, you do see some breast tenderness, whether it's men or in women. This isn't something I should recommend. This isn't something we typically prescribe to men for acne. Men may be on it for other reasons, but not for acne. And some other side effects with this medication, Gotti, may include things like irregular periods. So some side effects to be aware of. That being said, it is something I have prescribed. It is something I have a ton of patients I've seen on. They have great results. So definitely talk to your doctor if you're having some of that stubborn acne that's not going away with typical treatment.
The more you know. Dr. Akshay Sayal, always good to see you. Thank you so much. And coming up, a TikTok influencer accused of plotting to murder the father of her child and allegedly recruiting her own dad to help. What we're learning here, coming up next. 90 back. All right. 90 back. Let me just take a look here. We got this wild story coming up next. It is
See reverse, isn't it?
pretty wild. Okay, let's see. Thanks for sharing, guys, especially TikTok. I avoid caffeine and sugar together. So coffee with no sugar. How does that work? Pretty good. Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Kat, so you found out about it from your doctor. Interesting. Yeah, that seems like what Dr. Sayal has been doing too. That's why he's the best doctor.
1 minute.
Let's see. Hydrate, Ricky. Yes, for sure. Let's see. Black coffee is a thing. I know.
You can hide 1 and 2.
Black coffee, actually, I've been kind of a coffee snob recently. I like coffee that tastes very
30.
like fruit, which is how coffee beans taste before they're burned in a coffee roaster. Prevents outbreaks. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay, I'm learning all kinds of stuff. 15 seconds. Okay, this next one is pretty wild. It's that murder plot on TikTok with the TikTok influencer. Talk about it right now.
5, 4, 3.
Hey there, welcome back. For this next story, take a 24-year-old influencer, an alleged murder plot, a boy band, and you've got this next story. NBC's entertainment correspondent, Chloe Malas, is this one.
Hey there, this is a story that almost sounds like it was ripped from the pages of a screenplay in Hollywood. So first, I just want to break it down once again because it can get a little bit confusing as to who the players are in this criminal investigation. You have Gabriela Gonzalez. She is a popular star on social media. She's a TikTok influencer with almost 500,000 followers. You have her father, Francisco Gonzalez, and then you have Gabriela's then boyfriend, Kai Cordry. And then the victim here, Jack Avery, who you might know, he's a popular boy band star. So Gabriela has a 7-year-old child with Jack Avery, and she had been in this contentious custody battle back and forth over the last couple of years. And allegedly, Gabriela and her father conspired with her then boyfriend to hire a hitman for $10,000, and that money was allegedly paid on the dark web to get rid of Jack Avery and to potentially make it look like he had been in a terrible, devastating car accident. Well, it turns out that although money was paid to somebody that was allegedly going to carry out this murder for hire, that individual was a person from law enforcement, and they were able to do this investigation, gather what they needed to then not only let Jack Avery know that, hey, there is a hit out on your life, but also it is your ex and ex-father-in-law, right? The father of the grandfather of your child. So all of these individuals arrested. This is moving full steam ahead to trial, but I do want to read you something from the complaint. It says, Kai Cordry, using the alias Lizard King 69, instructed the dark web murder for hire site and or its participants that Jack Avery should be killed by whatever method was easiest, including a shooting or a staged incident. So again, this is a story that is captivating people all over social media because it is this TikTok star, it is this famous pop star, and again, it's something like right out of a TV movie that you would binge on a Friday night. Back to you.
Yeah, And yet, fortunately, no one died. NBC's Clint Malas, thank you so much. And still to come, Jell-O's popular, colorful appearance getting a bit of a makeover to part ways with synthetic colors. So what's going to stick? More ahead. But first, you got to see this. It was a test drive that quickly turned into a rescue mission and an arrest. Video here shows a Texas guy trying out Tesla's wade mode that allows that Tesla Cybertruck to apparently wade through bodies of water like rivers or creeks, allegedly, but unfortunately that Cybertruck did not make it very far before it became stuck, started filling up with water, forcing the driver and the passenger to abandon Cybership. We'll be right back.
All right, clarity, blocking tape.
That is an expensive experiment. I mean, yikes. Why would you trust? I don't know. Anyway. So it will make a great Netflix movie, Cyberstuck. Good one, Kat. Michi, world's first trillionaire. Let's see. What else were you guys talking about? Yeah. Interesting. Okay, right now news. I'm following you guys right now. And thank you guys so very, very much for watching. If you guys were watching at the top of the show, you saw that Jell-O piece. That's the piece that we're going to be running right now. It's going to pop up in the middle of our little chat. With that, I'll switch it over, and then you guys can watch the end of the show, and I will see you tomorrow. But thank you guys so very much for watching. And yeah, we've got some new names in here. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to hang out with us. An hour of news is a lot of news. I hope you get a chance to go outside and hug a tree, touch some grass. Right now news out of Indio. That's right. Anybody on there that wants to see what the future of news looks like, give them a follow. Kala Lily, we'll see you tomorrow. Binks the Cat, you have a great night. MS, Black Clothes, it's the best. That makes me not have to think about what I'm going to wear. Michi just showed my hubby, and he thinks he knows you too. Aw, tell him I said hi. William, no. Ministro, you are not new. You are an OG around here. Everybody have a wonderful, wonderful night. And yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. But I think the show continues here. See you tomorrow. And finally tonight, there are some brands that are so big, we use the brand as the name of the product itself. Jell-O is one of them, but the Jell-O we know is getting some major changes thanks to a push for natural ingredients and less sugar. NBC's Vicky Nguyen gels all the details together for us.
Make dessert. Instead, I made some fun. A century-old American dessert marketed to parents and kids for generations.
There's so much you can do when you have a bowl of Jell-O gelatin made up.
With much of its appeal coming from its gravity-defying gelatin and its most unnatural colors, now trying to fit into a new mold with a more natural look. Jell-O rolling out a new line made without synthetic colors or artificial sweeteners.
I feel like you can kind of taste that it's artificial, so it definitely sounds more intriguing.
Its maker, the Kraft Heinz Company, says Jell-O simply will have real fruit juice. It will also cut 25% of the sugar from the original version and its puddings. Ingredients, it says, parents increasingly want.
I'd buy it more.
One new survey showing nearly half of U.S. parents say they're looking for options with less sugar for their kids. And industry-wide sales of pre-made gelatin fell 21% over the last 4 years.
I think we'll see more and more of this, particularly because people want to know what's in their food and there's a demand for it. And ultimately, it's for the good of the health of the American population. So as a dietitian, I'm going to say thumbs up to that.
The brand getting slammed on social media for its legacy products, which will still be available for now.
You're getting a ton of chemicals when you're eating Jell-O.
Shaking up the jiggly snack coincides with the Trump administration's Make America Healthy Again agenda, spearheaded by Health Secretary RFK Jr. and backed by an army of influencers known as Maha Moms.
In the United States, they use petroleum-based dyes that hurt American kids.
After the FDA banned an artificial dye, Red No. 3, at the end of President Biden's term, Team Maha going further, urging food makers to phase out other artificial colorings. Kraft Heinz saying last summer it would do just that by the end of next year. And other big brands, Hershey, Kellogg's, General Mills, and more, falling in line. Cheetos and Doritos, owned by PepsiCo, rolled out colorless alternatives to some of their chips. Maha moms are, for the most part, praising the big shift on dyes, but have recently clashed with the administration on other issues, like its decision to increase production of a controversial pesticide. And whether consumers will buy these new, more muted food products, still to be seen. I would just eat it. Kraft Heinz announced a similar artificial dye-free alternative Jell-O a decade ago. It was discontinued. We'll see if this fresh change will actually stick. Vicki Nguyen, NBC News.
Vicki, thank you so much. And that's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Gotti Schwartz. We'll see you here tomorrow. But until then, stay tuned to NBC News Now.